Are you ready? Let's go!
Don't you sometimes just want to talk about everything? You know, there's days when you can just talk about anything. Need to sit back and chat about nothing at all? Nothing but Julie, coming at you with fun and creative topics and interviews.
Did you hear Julie's podcast? She's got the greatest topics.
Come join the chat about everything, anything, and nothing. So unwind and tune in to Nothing But Julie. Great topics and cool interviews with some pretty awesome people. And now, without further delay, here's Nothing But Julie.
Hi, everybody. It is Julie and Rhonda, Nothing But Julie podcast. Happy Thursday to you. What's up, Rhonda?
Hi, Julie. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing just dandy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, except for the heat, the weather.
The heat, we were talking about this earlier about how ridiculously hot it is now. And you had mentioned that your friend in Colorado said it's snowing, which
It's snowing, yeah.
cannot believe. But it is brutal and it's bad. You're in Arizona and you have that dry heat. And I'm in Florida and I have the humidity. I don't know which one's worse.
So I've lived in both places and I prefer the humidity, but I think that's just because that's what I'm used to growing up. Like here, I think my skin is so dry all the time. Like you have to put lotion on constantly and my hair feels really dry all the time. And then you put lotion on and you know how it feels when you put lotion on and then you sweat and it's so gross.
Oh, I do.
So you have that going on.
I know. And when the comparison I have is my aunt lives in Arizona. I visited her a few times. It wasn't in the summertime though. It was in the wintertime and it was nice. But I remember that heat and the dryness. And then my husband and I had gone to Vegas, and so it was in June. So we experienced that dry heat, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but when we went, we decided to go down the strip and look at all the different, hotels and the interiors and all the fun stuff. And we probably went through an entire bottle of water walking from one hotel to the next. I got so hot. I just had to stop. I never at that point had sweat so much as I did in Arizona. It wasn't that bad in Florida, but the humidity, first of all, you were talking about the dry hair with your skin and your hair. I mean, I have frizzy hair and curly hair to begin with, and I have to tame it with product. Living in a humid state, my hair, it's like, don't move to Florida, people, if you have frizzy, curly hair, because it's just going to be so much worse. And that is the first thing I noticed when I moved to Florida when it was hot. But now, because it's super hot in May, like too hot, I'm just dripping. I'm outside for 10 seconds and I'm perspiring. And I saw this thing on Facebook. I forget exactly what it said, but it's that time of year when you go outside and you get angry for no reason at all, and it's because of the heat.
Because you're
cranky. And nobody would understand when I would tell them I get angry, like I'm insatiably angry. And when I saw that post, I was like, oh, good, I'm not the only one.
I do. I get very like cranky and annoyed, like a toddler. Like how toddlers, when they don't want to go to sleep, that's how I feel when it's hot out. Like everything is annoying me. And if people stand too close, I'm like, don't, your hot air is like the heat of your body. I can feel it and get it away.
God. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that our dogs wanted, we were sitting outside the other night and our dogs want to, of course, come around me. And then, they're all just like breathing on me. And I was like, they got to get away. Like they're just breathing this hot air onto me and I can't do it.
It's the worst. I know. And when it's too hot outside, is there's two key things that happen. Well, heat and humidity is when the condensation is building on the outside of your windows, and you're like, what the hell is going on? Because it's
Yes.
so humid out and it's so cool in the house. But also the other day when I was outside, I was like, I was in my lanai and I said, I've got to go inside. I go inside and it felt freezing. And it was just set to the normal temperature. And I was saying to my husband, that's how hot it is outside, that it feels like, I'm in the freezer right now. That's how hot it is. And it's May. We're not
Yeah,
even in
I
the
know.
middle of May yet. And it's brutal. And I play pickleball and I play tennis. And we play now at 7 o'clock at night, which is probably the nicest time to be outside.
Yeah,
And
I was gonna say that's about the
everybody's
nicest time here.
right. So everybody's walking their dogs. I'm outside. I'm dripping. I'm literally dripping from playing pickleball. It is on those days I drink more water than normal. I'll add in an extra few glasses or whatever it is because I know I have to stay hydrated. But last night I was doing some research because I was getting headaches after I would play. And it was either a combination of being just not being hydrated enough or um, just the heat itself. Just the heat is just screwing up my system. Coconut water has it's all natural
Oh yeah.
electrolytes and right and potassium and sodium because I don't want to drink all the Gatorade and the sports drinks.
Yeah, it's got
I
too much sugar, I feel like.
Yeah, too much just sugar and bad stuff in it. And I would prefer to do something more natural. So I am going to head out today or tomorrow and pick up some coconut water. But you have to be careful because it's like a laxative. It can kind of be like a laxative.
Oh.
I know, but they say the best thing to do is to drink plenty of water before, and then when you come back to have the coconut water or like a post-workout smoothie, add that. And I always have smoothies whenever I come home. It's just really refreshing. But instead of adding water and ice, I'll just add the coconut water, and that will help.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm not in love with the taste of coconut water. I don't love it, but if
I'm
I if
I'm
I
not
add it to
either.
something, yeah, it's
I
got a weird
I
taste.
I know it's good for you and it, adds in, stuff that you lose, especially when you're sweating a lot. But like you, I'm not in love with the taste and I've tried several different ones
Mm.
and they all just kind of have just a weird
It's like a
little
coconut
flavor.
taste,
Yeah, yeah.
but unless you don't like coconut, I mean, I like coconut
I
like
do
in
too,
ice
but
cream or something, like shredded coconut
you know
maybe.
what? I think that's because that's sweetened.
You're probably right. Yeah, I get the unsweetened coconut milk. Well, I got
Me
it once
too.
before, right? But I think that when it's in a smoothie, the fruit will take over the taste and you won't really taste the coconut as much.
Yeah, because when I make my smoothies, if I do one, I can put I don't like kale, but if I mix it
Ugh.
into my smoothie,
Right.
the other fruits and stuff, I don't even notice it's in there.
Oh, it's so funny you said that. I used to make, green smoothies, but I would make them with vegetables and with fruit.
That's what I do.
Right? Okay, but here's the thing. Just looking at it was enough for me to get sick. I just don't want to drink something that looks like puke. So, but I got used to the taste. This was when I was working, and I would come home and I would eat, or I would take out my puppy a few days a week, and so I would make myself a smoothie to kind of keep me hydrated and give me a boost of energy and have the fruits and vegetables that I don't always have. But I got so used to the taste that the color didn't really bother me. But when I stopped working, it was really hard for me to have the smoothies. And I did the same thing you did. I had like frozen kale. I did some spinach. That was pretty much it. But for the veggies, but then I would add in fruit. But I don't think I can go back to it. Do you have them often? The green ones?
Kale is supposed to help with migraines, and
Oh,
I don't know. I mean, I don't know, and I don't want to be on the preventative medication for migraines because it puts me in a fog. I get
okay.
a brain fog, and there's the side effects are really bad, and so I don't want to be on that, and so I try to find other things, and so we heard that kale would like eating kale so many times a week would help with these. And so I do the smoothies like 3 times a week and put the kale in there because I've tried kale prepared multiple ways and I just don't like it. So I have to, sometimes I'll mix it in a salad and then like the dressing and the other stuff kind of gets rid of that flavor for me. It's bitter.
It's disgusting. I can't, and
Yeah,
I won't.
it's so gross. And
And the
you know,
way it
everyone
looks
says
and
make
feels.
kale chips, and I said no,
Okay,
those are
no,
disgusting.
no.
Like
What is with, look, I know that there are trends and stuff, and obviously kale has been a trend enough. Like
right,
when I touch it, like the texture,
it's
it's like,
waxy and gross. Our guinea
ugh,
pig loves it, you know, and so
sure.
like sometimes I'm like, I just feed it to him, you know,
Well,
instead of eat it myself.
what about collard greens? Have you ever tried that? Can that help for migraines?
It's specific to kale. It's something that's specific in the
Really?
kale. But you know what? That's the thing. I like other greens, like
Yeah,
spinach, collards. I like all of those, but they
right.
don't have that disgusting taste that.
Well, whatever it is that helps you with the kale, maybe you can find another source of it that
Yeah,
might
that's what
taste better.
it's okay in the smoothies. I don't mind it. And then,
Yeah.
Aubrey hates vegetables. Like, you know, she's 9,
Oh, well,
almost
she's a
10. So
kid.
of course
Yeah.
she's a kid. So I will make her a smoothie and add in some vegetables. Um, and so when I make hers in the morning and I make mine and then, you know, we drink them on the ride to school. And so,
Aw. I've done that before with my son when he was young. As a matter of fact, when I make certain foods now, like he's almost 25 and he's not a big vegetable eater. He will, however, eat vegetables when I make dinner because I always have vegetables. There are some vegetables he won't eat, but when I make food like a beef stew or chili, I throw in or meat sauce, I throw in every vegetable possible because you really can't taste it because it's mixed in with the meat. And he has no idea that 90% of it is vegetables, which is why it's so filling and so hearty.
I do that to them all the time.
But I mean, he's almost 25. I mean, it's like a little ridiculous. But like I said, he and I are very much the same where I won't grab vegetables during the day. Sometimes I might have like some celery or some broccoli or even peppers. But he very rare because he's working, he very rarely reaches for it, which is why as long as he's still home and I'm cooking, I will, make sure that I make some form of vegetables, for him. But anyway, so our topic is about pregnancy, which should be a fun topic because it's been a really long time since we were both pregnant. So
Yes.
I would love to hear your story, your pregnancy story, and then I'll tell you mine, and then we can discuss other pregnancy stories. But you go first.
So, I mean, I got pregnant really young. I was only 18 and I started getting very sick and I was walking down the hallway and it just hit me like, oh my God, you're getting sick because you're
Oh,
pregnant, like the morning sickness. And I
right.
took a test and sure enough, I was
Oh,
pregnant. And I had a fairly, I would say, easy pregnancy. There was no like abnormalities. I didn't have high blood pressure. I didn't have to deal with any of that. The only thing they were concerned about was I was so tiny was the growth of the baby.
oh my God,
Um,
Rhonda, that's exactly what happened to me.
because he was growing very quickly for a while.
Yeah.
And my doctor kept saying, if he continues to grow this quickly, we're gonna just have to schedule a C-section. And I
Hmm.
didn't want to do that. I'd had a friend that had a C-section and she ended up getting pneumonia afterwards. And
Oh,
she ripped open her incision and it was very traumatic for her. And so that was my idea of what it was going to be like.
right.
And I know that people have C-sections and are perfectly fine and you know it's a normal thing, but that was my idea in my mind. But you know, everything, it was just like one of the world's smoothest pregnancy. I was sick the entire time. I had morning sickness the whole
Oh,
time.
was
I
it
was
all day or?
all day, all the time. I just
No.
can't, yes, I would feel nauseous just pretty much all the time. On the way to have him at the hospital, I still was feeling sick.
Oh my God.
Yes, it was
You poor thing.
terrible.
Oh God.
It was
Isn't there a name for
terrible.
that?
I
Kate
don't remember.
Middleton had it with every single child. I forget what it's called, but she was I don't think it was the whole pregnancy, but she was very, very sick the first like few months. But I know there's a name for it. But and how long were you in labor for? How was the delivery?
13 hours.
Hmm,
And then, so, I mean, an average time. And then, I had to push for about 45 minutes.
right.
I did want to give up at the about
Oh,
40-minute mark. I was like, I just told
oh,
them I'm too tired. I can't do it anymore. I hadn't been sleeping well for weeks.
yeah.
Um, and, I mean, you're uncomfortable. He was born in the beginning of June, so it was hot. I was uncomfortable. I was huge. And and I was so tired. I was just like, I'm not doing it. I can't do this anymore. And he said, you can literally feel the baby's head.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was like, okay, I guess we're pretty close then.
Right.
I
I guess I
finished
should just
this.
push.
I guess I should just finish this. Yeah.
Wow. How big was he?
7 pounds, 9.6 ounces. Isn't that weird? I remember that exactly. Like,
Yeah. I
you
know
know,
it's not weird.
um,
It's your baby.
almost 21 years, and he's still amazed because he's like, I can't believe you remember like exactly how big, exactly how long. And I was like, yeah, I just don't think I'll ever forget that.
No, I remember it too. It's almost ingrained in your head. But I wonder if there were more children, if we would remember it
I don't
still.
I'm gonna ask my sister. She's pregnant with her third one. I'm gonna
Oh,
ask her if she
wow.
remembers like each
I'd
one.
be
After she has this
interested.
baby, I'm gonna say, hey, do you remember the exact weight of each one?
Yeah.
She
I
probably will though.
I wouldn't be surprised if she remembered it.
Yeah, it was I mean, I didn't mind being pregnant.
Where were you
Really,
living at that
like
time?
Florida.
Oh, so you were in Florida.
I was in Florida.
So,
But I didn't really mind being pregnant at all. Like, some people really don't like it, but
mm,
it didn't really, I
I didn't
never,
mind it either.
yeah, it didn't really like bother me. Like, people kept saying, oh, are you gonna like, aren't you worried about like having stretch marks or this or that? And I was like, not really. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
I agree. I didn't have a worry like that at all. Wasn't it that I remember that there were a lot of women who were using oh, what is that cream that they use on there?
cocoa butter.
It's something like that. There was another one, and I can't remember it, but I remember someone saying, "Oh, you better start, rubbing blah 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 in your belly," and I was like, "Why?" And she's like, "Well, stretch marks," and I was like, "Oh, okay." I didn't know anything about it. Um, I can't remember the name. What is it? It always happens when I'm doing a
They
podcast.
told they told me vitamin E and cocoa butter, and I hate the smell of cocoa butter. Um, so
Yeah, I'll
I
bet.
was just like, I was like, it's too sweet for me, and I was like, and everything was making me sick. So then I
I
was like, I
know.
really don't care. I don't care.
And there's definitely certain scents that you just can't deal with when you're pregnant. That is, I can't remember there being like a specific scent I didn't like, but there were definitely some foods. But so let me tell you about my experience. Very similar to yours. I got pregnant, but I didn't know I was pregnant, and I was at my grandmother's funeral. She had passed away like 2 weeks prior to me finding out. And we were trying to get pregnant, but I wasn't really thinking about it because I was so busy working that, like, I wasn't really keeping track. And my sister had come to my house and told me that my grandmother had passed away. We were close, so I was extremely upset. And then um, we went to Florida for the funeral, and I was overly emotional. Like, I loved my grandma and I knew I was going to be emotional, but this was like uncontrollable crying. Like, I just
Right.
could not control it. And to the point where my dad was actually in the back with my sister and I was in the front with my mom and my aunt. And my dad left my sister to come to the front to hold my hand because I was like, I just, I don't mean to laugh because it was a funeral, but it was funny because I was like, "Ah!" just out of control. And so we're at the service and my sister says, have you taken a pregnancy test? And I'm like, no. She's like, well, you could be pregnant. I'm like, I'm not pregnant. She's like, are you late? And I'm like, yeah, like maybe a few days, but that happens to me every now and then. Okay. Get home. It's like 10 days. And my sister keeps nagging me. Have you taken a pregnancy test? And I'm like, Marlo, just chill. I'm like, fine. I go out, get a pregnancy test, come home. I'm pregnant. Right. And I'm like, wait, what? It was just so weird because when you're planning to be pregnant, it's kind of like you can't wait to take a pregnancy test, and you're counting down the days until you can, and I missed my period, so I must be pregnant. Let me get a pregnancy. It wasn't even a factor. And so I was pregnant and everything was great. And I was really small, and I, like you, it wasn't like anything, was everything was fine. And then at about 5 months, as soon as my feet hit the floor, I had to run into the bathroom and throw up. I had such bad morning sickness. But the odd thing is that it happened at 5 months, and it happened like I could stay in bed all day and not move. But as soon as my feet hit the floor, I had to run. And then that was it. And I was fine the rest of the day. It was the most peculiar thing. I remember that like it was yesterday. And then I went into labor, and I remember I said to my husband, I'm just going to try and go to the bathroom one more time so I could get at least an hour of sleep. Ha ha ha. So I sit on the toilet. I'm done going to the bathroom, and yet I still hear dribble, dribble. And I'm like, honey, I think my water just broke, but I'm not sure. He's like, well, what does that mean? And I'm like, well, I know I'm done going to the bathroom, but I still hear like drip, drip, drip. And he's like, all right, well, let's just wait a little bit. I'm like, okay, drip, drip, drip is still coming. And I started to panic. I got so scared because I knew my water was in the midst of breaking. And I picked up the phone. I called my sister and I was crying. I was like, I'm so scared. Well, anyway, 16 hours later. And so it was 16 hours of labor, but it wasn't happening so quickly. So they gave me some Pitocin to speed it up. And I would say halfway through, I got an epidural because I was like, screw this. I
I
am
did
not
get an epidural as well.
right. And I was like, forget it. And I was on cloud nine, but I had a reaction to the medications and I got really sick. So I'm throwing up, blah, blah. Finally, I can give birth to this child. But they had just taken me off of the epidural. They didn't take me off when I was, 8 or 9. They should have done that because I was really upset that I was giving birth while I still had the drugs in me. But oh well, whatever. The great thing about that is when I had to start pushing, I did not feel a thing. I could feel like my head like exploding because I was like, pushing.
Yeah.
But that was it. I couldn't feel anything. And I just remember the doctor. Now, here's my husband. He's got the freaking camera, all right, in the delivery room. And he's taking pictures of things you would not want to see. Like, why would you take a picture of that? What's wrong with you? And then when the head was crowning, he gave the camera to the nurse and said, can you keep taking pictures? Like, what is wrong with you? Anyway, ugh,
So
disgusting.
I woke up in the middle of the night and I don't, of course, your first time you're pregnant, you don't know what labor feels like, and sometimes you have those contractions ahead of time and they're nothing. Yep. So that had happened to me. I had thought I was in labor and I went, and they were like, no, it's just Braxton Hicks, go home. So
how long before was that?
Probably like 2 weeks before I had him. And so then I kept the night before he was born, I kept waking up all night feeling those, but they weren't very strong. And so I was like, oh, it's just the same thing. I was still a couple days from my due date. And so I got up in the morning and went to my mom's house and she was like, I think you're in labor. And I was like, no, I'm not. And we were going to go to lunch and stuff. And I was like, oh, these are starting to hurt a little bit. And she was like, I'm pretty sure you're in labor. And I was like, no, it's just the same thing again, and I didn't want to like get my hopes up. So I was just kind of ignoring it. And then I'm sitting on her couch and I feel like this pop sensation in my stomach.
Uh-oh.
And I go, Mom. And I stood up and the water just came, like Like there was no denying it. And that contraction that happened right after that, it brought me back to my knees. Like
Oh
it was so
no.
strong. And so my mom was in her room and I was in her living room and I said, Mom, my water just broke. And she runs out there and she's like, it's her first grandchild. And she's like,
Yeah.
oh gosh. She goes, I got to take you to the hospital.
Well,
And
let
then
me ask you, when your water broke, was it like a river or was it like a drip like mine?
it was like a river.
Really?
Yes.
That's
It was
amazing.
like, it was like a
Amazing.
river. And I was like, this is it. I guess I am in labor. I said, you were right, you know? And she said, okay. And she said, okay, I got to take you to the hospital. And she starts running around getting stuff. And I'm just sitting there in pain. And
Oh.
she goes, I don't want to wear this shirt when my first grandchild is born. I have to go change.
Oh my God.
And
That is so funny.
she goes and changes
I
her
have to
shirt.
change my
Yes.
appearance. Your
And
baby's
so
gonna remember me. And what
right,
I'm
right. She's like, I don't want to meet my grandson in this outfit.
Oh,
I'm
that
gonna
is
go change.
adorable.
And so that was so cute, you know, and I remind her of that. And she's like, well, I wanted to look nice for him. And I
Does
said,
he know the
okay.
story? Does your son know
Okay.
this?
She was so nervous
Oh,
to meet her first grandchild. So
oh, that's such a sweet story.
it is. It's really nice. And Jacob gets a kick out of it too, because he's like, you know, I don't remember.
Well, duh. I mean, but maybe did she take a picture so he can always look back and see what she
But you know,
wore?
in the pictures at the hospital there, of course, she has on her very cute outfit. So
Yeah,
so that's
so
good.
funny. I remember when I had one more push and the doctor said, okay, Julie, sit up so you can see your son being born. And I'm like, sit up? Like I
Right.
literally had to pull myself up like, hello, can someone, help me here? My husband's, down there, watching everything. He's not he's not by me where he's supposed to be, like helping me up and holding my hand and honey, you're doing great. No, he's down at the other end watching the show. And I had to lift myself up, and literally like watch him being born. And I was like, what the holy hell? Like you just see this head coming in. It was all hair. He was born with a head of hair. And it was just like, okay. And it was so bizarre because when you don't feel any kind of pain, but you see this freaking thing coming out of you, it's like, what's going on?
Yeah, you're like,
So I'm yeah, like, okay. And like I said, the only way I knew it was happening was, because my head felt like it was going to explode. But he was 6 pounds 2 ounces, but discharged at 5'14", and he was 19 inches. And it's supposed to be this beautiful moment, and you're crying, and they give you your baby. Well, it's disgusting, and all I remember is laying back down, being exhausted, like just so happy it's over. And then they gave me him. And they didn't even like give me something like to put something over me. They just put him on me. Excuse me. And I'm like, ugh, can you clean him up first?
no, Mark and I always talk like when you watch a movie and they show like a birth of a baby and they
Yeah,
take
that's
this
so clean.
beautiful clean baby
Yeah.
that's
Bullshit.
alert and I'm like, that is not what it's like.
That's
this
the
is
movie.
false.
It's bullshit. It was and I remember it, I mean, to this day, I was like, ugh, like I wouldn't even touch him with my hands. I said, can you just clean him up a little bit first? And meanwhile, there's Jeff all happy and whatever. And then they gave him to me. And the first thing I said was, Dad? He was my dad. He looked just like my father, like his lips, everything. And I was like, then we called my parents and I was like, okay, I gave birth to my father. Like the pictures we took, it was him. And then, he started changing, but it was so funny. And then I do remember, like I said, all the medication got me so sick that the rest of that day, it was, about 3:00 when I gave birth. The rest of that day and a good portion of up until the afternoon the next day, I was still so sick. And I just remember having like a cool washcloth on me like for hours. But um, our friends decided to come visit 2 hours after I gave birth. And I had said
Oh,
to my husband, why are they here? Like I look like crap. I feel like crap. And they're all in my room now. Must have been about 6 or 7 of them. And I could not entertain them. I said, look, guys, I am just beat. And I'm really sorry, but we'll all have a get together soon. I was just out of sorts. And but they were really sweet and came to see me, but really to see the baby. So they were able to go see the baby. But I was not planning on nursing. I had gotten bottles and formula and just was like, no way, I'm not nursing. And there was like a baby boom, and I was sharing a room with another girl. It was a nice size room. And so I remember at night, the first night after I gave birth, um, they bring the babies into you to feed, and my baby was not there. And I'm like, where's my baby? Like, yeah, I'm sorry, but like, I just want him near me. Like, why does he have to be in the nursery?
right. Like just leave him here with me.
Well, they do that now. And I think maybe if you have like a single room, they might do that back then, but back then the girl next to me was nursing, and I remember they brought her baby in and they drew the curtain, and then that was it. So I said to the nurse, can I please have my son? And she said, sure. She said, but we already fed him, just so you know. I said, okay. And I was very upset about that because I guess deep down I thought, oh, maybe I really didn't, want him to be bottle fed. So, I asked her to draw the curtain. She gave me my son. And I just remember having this like revelation of like that at that moment, it was the first time we were able to really be alone and quiet. And I was holding him. And of course, I was crying and nervous, like, oh my God, I'm a mom. Like, shit.
Right. Yeah. No, I
Shit.
see. I didn't have that moment until I had to stay in the hospital an extra 2 days because I was bleeding so much, and so they made me
Oh,
stay in there, and I had to have a transfusion, and
did you? Oh my
yeah,
God.
and so then they, when I was released, they let him stay in with me, even though he could have technically left. They kept him as well so that he didn't get sent home
Oh,
without me. Um,
yeah.
and they said it's only a couple of days, we're not going to separate them. And when they take you down to the car, and they push you in the wheelchair, and then the nurse helps you put them in the car seat,
Yeah.
I get into the back seat with him, and I just like look back at the nurse, and I was like, I can't believe they're just letting me go with him. Like,
I know.
I don't know what
What's
I'm
wrong with you
doing.
people? I don't know what I'm doing. It's so
That's it.
true.
That's it.
It's so
And
true.
the worst thing was I'd read these like safety books about like what you need to do in your home, and I was like, it's a miracle any of us survives. Everything is just trying to
It's so
kill us.
true. It's so true. And it's funny because I always used to say that, raising a child doesn't come with a manual, which I know is like a statement a lot of people say, but it's really true. You can read all the books, but
Yes.
there's nothing close to when it really happens. And excuse me, I remember that night in the hospital, I was holding him and I was talking to him. And as soon as I started to talk, he was a little fidgety. He stopped and he was like looking for me. His eyes were still a little closed. And it was at that moment I was like, oh my God, he recognizes my voice. It was so unimaginable. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna try and nurse him. And my boobs were like, they were huge. You remember that? And they
Oh
were
yeah.
hard as a rock, right? And I was hurting and I'm like, let me just try. Well, he literally latched on like that. And I was
Oh.
like, okay, guess I'm breastfeeding. And that was it. I nursed him for 15 months. And I am so glad that I was able to, because there's a lot of women who can't for whatever reasons, whether personal reasons or they're working or the child doesn't latch on or you're not making enough milk. And I was so lucky to have that experience, and it was beautiful. And I was so upset because I thought that, the colostrum was gone, and the nurse said, "Oh no, no, you're okay. You're still okay. I mean, it's only been a few hours since you had him." And then that was it for me. And it was it was it was very comforting for not only him, but for me. But I remember there were times when, my girlfriends, they had babies too. And, we would make play dates or go to the mall, the moms walking around. And if their babies were fussy, they would give them a bottle. But for me, I had to stop what I was
Right.
doing and maybe go into like a fitting room or whatever. Like I literally refused to give him a bottle, even with breast milk in it, because I was so afraid that he would not accept the breast anymore. So I would either leave or excuse myself for a little bit. But I was so um self-conscious that I was not the kind of person that would just, sit by the water fountain and drape him with a blanket or something, over me. I would actually go into a room or in my car or something, and do it in private.
Yeah, I nursed Jacob, and I had planned to. And then he had reflux really bad, so he had
Oh,
esophageal reflux. And
oh,
so
baby.
I kept telling them, I said, "Okay, I nurse him," and then he immediately spits everything up, and he's hungry again, and we are
Yeah.
exhausted. And the doctor said, "Oh no, he's not spitting everything up. It just looks like a lot." And I said, "No, I'm telling you, it's everything." And then he lost weight.
Oh
Like, you
no.
take him like once a week. And so he was losing weight. And she was asking me how. So then they said, "Well, we need you to pump to make sure you're making enough. Like maybe
Oh
that's what it is."
God.
And so I start pumping, and I was definitely making enough. And so he really was throwing all of it up immediately.
Poor baby.
And I said, "Well, is it something I'm eating, or, the food journal?" We tried all these things. And I had to continue pumping, which I did for a little over a year, but I would have to mix thickening solution into the formula. So
Okay.
I still had to feed him with a bottle, but um and I felt bad about that for a long time, because I was like, this is my fault, whatever. And
Oh
it's just,
no.
and it's just something that happens with some babies, and they outgrow it.
Yeah.
It's the flap in their stomach is not like big enough or fully formed, and so it just continues to develop after birth. But no one, and it was so frustrating because no one believed me. They kept saying, "Oh, he's not spitting up all of it.
That's
It's
the
just,"
worst. That's
and I,
just
and I was like, I know that I don't have like six kids or like vast experience, but I'm telling
right.
you, like, he's hungry immediately after I'm feeding him, and I know that that's not normal.
Well,
But
it's there's nothing worse than being a new mommy and questioning, um, if you're at fault, instead of it actually being something that could be physically wrong with your child. And with Jake, he was long and lanky. I was very thin for a long time. My husband is 6'4" and was very thin for a long period of time. Well, not very thin, just in good shape.
yeah, slender. Yeah.
Yeah, and so here's Jake, and he's like the tallest. His growth as far as height was off the charts, and but his weight gain wasn't. And so when I was pregnant with him, because I was like you, I was small, and I was working in a company, a big company, and every other woman was pregnant, and every other woman was huge, and here I am with a little basketball, and everybody would say, "Is everything okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just not, eating, 20 pounds of food like everybody else is. Sorry."
Right. So
It
I was
wasn't.
the same way. I was still very little everywhere, but I had like this ginormous belly.
Mine wasn't that. I hadn't gained. At the end of the day, I gained like 30 pounds, but I had to have a heart monitor around me every time I would, go in for a visit because he was concerned about the baby's weight. And then after I had him, the pediatrician was concerned about his weight. I remember one pediatrician who I left said, your mother's milk, that's what he would call it, is not enough." And I was like, "What?" Like what the, and so I was really upset about what he wanted me to do. So I went and I got a second opinion. And this pediatrician said, "Your son might not be within the weight." How they show you like that chart
Yeah,
and
and
they're
that
supposed,
chart.
right,
Yeah.
that, this stage. your child's supposed to be between this weight and this weight. He said, what I'm seeing each time you have gone to the doctor is that your son is gaining weight. He just might not be gaining as much weight as another baby, but it doesn't mean that he's not gaining weight. And he
Right.
was gaining weight. So he said, no, you just keep on, breastfeeding. And then, at this point, it was like in another month, start adding the cereal. I forget how old he was. No, not the cereal. I'm sorry. Wait, how old are they when they can start eating the cereal? Was 6 months?
I think around there.
So yeah, it must have been around there. And that was it. But I remember being so upset. Your mother's milk is not enough. I'm like, oh, fuck yourself. Like, mother's
See,
milk is-
I mean, and that's what I thought was that that's what they thought, because Jacob was losing weight, but then the pediatrician was actually very helpful in that, because she said, we need to make sure that he is getting enough food, and so this is how we're going to do it. And she gave me a whole plan, and she was really, really great.
It's nice when they take the time to help you. This was an older man, and I was a little bit questionable, but so many people had referred him to me. But he was just old fashioned, and you would think, being old fashioned, he would actually want me to keep nursing. But just the fact that Jake was gaining weight was fine. And he was not sick. He was active, happy, sleeping. He wasn't like your son. He wasn't losing weight. He just wasn't gaining a ton of weight. And that had just a lot to do with his DNA and his makeup. And he's always been healthy and happy. And then that's it. Those moments can be really scary, when your child is losing weight or not gaining, and you're a new mom and you don't know what to do. Because sometimes, like your son, it could potentially be something physical.
Right.
How did he manage to keep the food down though?
After it was thickened, yeah. And so we had we had to thicken the formula or the breast milk.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually tried formula, because they said, well, formula is thicker than breast milk, so maybe if we switch to formula, he will not throw it up. And so we tried formula, but he still threw it up. And then
what did you use? Was it the rice mix, or what did you use?
No, it was just a thickening,
like an agent,
like an agent, like it just thickens things up. And so I continued to pump, and then just add the thickening agent to the breast milk, and then he would drink that from the bottle. And then I would have to sit him upright. Either hold him upright or put him in like a swing with him propped to where he was almost like sitting up, even though he was too little to sit up, so that gravity would also help.
And that helped.
And that helped a lot too.
Was it just like the very beginning, like after he ate, that you'd have to keep him propped up?
Yeah, for about 20-30 minutes. So
okay, all right, and then that worked.
And it was like, it was kind of a pain, because like you said, when you were breastfeeding, if you were out, like I couldn't just really quick make a bottle of formula, because it also had to sit for the time to thicken it, and then I was going to have to hold him upright, for 20 or 30 minutes afterwards.
Right.
But it was fine. Like
how long did you have to do that for?
I had to do that as long as he was I took him off the bottle at around a year old, and then so we kind of got to stop doing that as we added baby food and stuff. But his reflux was so bad that he would spit up the baby food, as thick as that is.
God, baby.
And then when he was a toddler, we went to a specialist, and they put that camera down the throat,
right? Endoscopy.
And they looked at it, and they said, it's almost closed.
Oh,
it's
okay.
They said it's almost closed. So he basically outgrew it. Then they said, as an adult, he'll probably have acid reflux. That will be a continued issue. And he does. Yeah. Even at, he's young, so he's only 20. So,
what does he do for that now?
He just takes like a over the counter, like whatever the stuff is,
Is it every day that he has to take something?
No.
Okay.
No,
only
it's
once.
not every day. So it's just like, and it's like certain foods too.
Well, sure.
Like with anybody.
Like with anybody. Yeah.
Right.
It's definitely, I had a little touch of that at one point in time, and I had to go on a omeprazole just to help. Something had happened with my esophagus, but it had something to do with the acid doing something to the esophagus, and so I had to lower the acids for like was like 2 months just so my esophagus can heal. That was a while back, but it was so weird because I'm like, I don't have acid reflux. And the gastroenterologist had said, it's funny. We had just seen a patient who came in because, she was having pain in her esophagus, but she didn't know it was her esophagus. And it was due to acid reflux, but she had never had any acid pain or heartburn or anything. It's just the weirdest thing how sometimes that can happen without you having symptoms. And that was
Yeah.
me. I didn't even know. All I knew is that it was starting to hurt. And they were like, oh, let's do an endoscopy. And oh, yeah, your esophagus is slightly irritated due to acid reflux. I'm like, what?
Right. Because you're like, I don't experience that. I very rarely get any kind of heartburn or anything like that. So,
but you know what? I found out that there were certain foods that, like you were saying before, there were certain foods that I just shouldn't be eating, like people shouldn't be eating just in general. And they were, but it wasn't even just food. It was like I loved orange juice, loved, and that was pretty much the main thing that screwed me up. And I had to give up orange juice, even if I would to water it down. And they're like, no, stop with the orange juice. I'm like, okay, fine. And then I was feeling so much better. So that was like the main thing. Plus, there were times when I would have certain foods where I guess it didn't agree with me. And I started realizing, this was like years ago. Oh, I guess there's certain foods that can really affect my esophagus. Like I wouldn't have thought that, like my esophagus is being affected. But anyway, to hear that, it can happen to a little baby because of that. And I read about that flap too. A lot of adults have issues with that too. But
so
yeah.
my mom does. My mom
Oh.
actually has to take prescription like omeprazole like every day, and
Oh
hers
boy.
and she has to avoid certain foods. And so, she didn't get diagnosed with that until Jacob was several years old. Like he
Mm.
was, well into elementary school. And then the doctor, when we talked to Jacob's pediatrician about that she had just he said that it very well could be a hereditary thing.
Huh. That's very interesting. Because I
And so,
know a lot
yeah.
of things can be, but I didn't think about that
But,
one. But wow.
I didn't think about it because like I said, I
It's
rarely ever get heart, like foods don't tend to affect me. I've never had any issues like that. So I guess I didn't think but apparently, it could skip a generation.
Can it? That is very interesting. I should find out if anyone in my family has it. I don't think they do. Who the hell knows? I mean, it's possible, but to skip a generation like that, like who would think
That's
that?
exactly. And my mom, of course, hadn't been diagnosed when I was pregnant and he was little, because she didn't know. She just would get
Right.
heartburn and thought it was just, normal, like normal heartburn, normal
Mm-hmm.
food affecting you.
Wow. Well, I love your pregnancy story. I love my pregnancy story only because I can laugh about it now. Like I can look back at it and just the whole story with Jeff taking pictures. And I have to tell you that he got the pictures developed and was looking through them, and he's like, "Oh, here," and I'm like, "Ugh, all right." And I am like, "Okay, I really didn't need to see this. Like, it was so much better being on the other end and not knowing
Yeah.
what was going on down there."
I think so. I think so.
Ugh, but to
Because
see it all, like, God.
I have heard stories from friends of mine who've had the birth videotaped. And then
Mm.
I'm like, okay, first of all, I'm like, who pulls that out like on family movie night? And then it's like, this is what we're gonna watch. Um, and then they've watched it later and they all say the same thing. Like I've had several friends who they're all like, I wish I hadn't watched that.
Oh God. Well, I will tell you that there was one picture, and I'm not going to be graphic. I'll just kind of talk in code of the head. Okay. And I was amazed at how big a woman can open up down there. I just remember seeing it like, what in holy hell? Like I couldn't believe it. And then I was like, ugh, okay, I'm never ever looking at this again. But I was truly amazed at it and loving being a woman to be able to not only make a baby, but then to give birth like that through this, your area, and then everything kind of just snaps back, after a
Yeah.
certain period of time with most people. But they have that vaginal rejuvenation. Have
Oh,
you
I
heard of that?
know. Yes,
Okay,
I've
I'm
heard of that.
sorry, but like, who really need? Look, I get if there's really some truth to the fact that your vagina gets like so massive that you can't really have an orgasm,
Oh,
after. But is there? You think there's truth to that, or do you think that some
I
women just want it tightened?
I don't know because it's a muscle, right?
It
So
is.
if it's a muscle, then
It goes back. It
right, it
expands.
goes
It
back, and
contracts.
like you can do Kegel exercises to keep the muscles working properly. So I don't, I
Or
don't,
hey, don't have sex for like a year and you'll be like a virgin again.
right.
Right? I remember that from Sex in the City. Charlotte had said that. Do you remember? She's like, yeah,
Yes.
I heard that if you don't have sex for like a year, it's like being a virgin
Being a
again or
virgin
something like
again.
that. Oh my God. Well, anyway, lovely speaking to you about our pregnancies. So much fun taking me back. It's just wow. And I can't believe that our babies are in their 20s.
It
That's crazy.
it is. The other day, like on Mother's Day, I posted the pictures of us, and I was like, I can't, like, he's going to be 21, and I just can't,
Mm.
like, how did that happen?
How did it
And
happen
where
so
did the
fast?
past 20 years ago?
Well, that's just it. I think that we are so involved in our children's lives, and working and doing so many things that all of a sudden you look back and you're like, wait a minute. Like I said to my son on Mother's Day, I said, I don't remember what the conversation was. And I just remember saying, because you're halfway to 30. And he was like, wait, what? Like he knew it. Of course he knew it. He knows that he's almost 25. But for me to say you're halfway to 30, he he just almost lost it. He was like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna be 30 in 5 years." It's like, I know. Like both of us at the same time. Like, I'm like, oh Jesus Christ, I'm gonna be so old. And then for him, he's like, how can I almost be 30? It's just it was such a weird feeling, Rhonda. Like, you know how when they were young and, oh, double digits, my
Yeah.
son's now 10, right? And oh my God, I can't believe my son's 16. And now I can't believe he's 20. Well, I can't believe he's almost 25. Like, what the freaking hell? I don't get it. I can't make sense of it. But
You know, Jacob asked me, he said, "Do you feel old, like having a kid this old?" And I was like, "No." I said, "That's the thing."
no, you
I
had him
said,
when you were
"I don't
young.
feel old at all."
You're
I said,
not.
so then when I tell people how old you are, they're like, "No, no." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I can't believe it either."
Well, you were almost 10 years younger than I was when you had your baby. So, I mean, you're only 40.
Yeah.
That was like a friend of mine when she had her baby, very young too. And, I don't feel old. I mean, I'm 52. I don't feel old. I feel young. I don't feel like I even look like I'm in my 50s. I feel like I'm still just like young at heart. And I think that if you kind of feel that way, it projects like,
I
you
think
know,
so too.
yeah, I took a picture with my son the other day for Mother's Day, and it actually was a decent picture. And I was like, huh, how old do you think I look? So my son's like, your age. It's like, fuck
Yeah.
you, my
That's
age. I
so
do not.
I ask people that all the time. Like I'll ask Mark or like Jacob, and I'll be like, how old do I look? Like, and they're like, 40. And I was like, I was
That's
like,
so wrong. Can't you just lie?
just tell me I don't look. Just tell me I look 32.
But
Whatever.
you
Like,
But
just
you must have other people tell you that you don't look 40, because that's how it is with me.
I do all
It's
the
almost
time.
like people are in shock when I say I'm 52. It's like me saying I'm 70, like, what? You're 52, which is very kind of them. And it certainly makes me feel good. But I also think it has a lot to do with how you take care of yourself and just feeling young at heart and just, being fun and silly and just not giving a shit about
Yeah, I
age.
know. I definitely think so too. Now, sometimes I will see like a photo or a video of someone that is the same age as me or like within a year or two. And sometimes I look at them and I think, and this is going to be so mean and you're going to think I'm terrible, but I'll look at them and be like, they look bad for their age, you know, like they
I
do not
agree.
behave.
I see
And then,
that too.
and then I think, is that what I look like?
No,
Like,
they're a
you know, like
different
I compare,
person.
you know, and that's and I mean, and I don't want to be mean to anyone, and I would never call anyone out personally, but sometimes I think maybe like, you know, people who smoke or don't take care
Hmm.
of their skin in the sun, it tends to
And
age them.
that's true. But there's also some people who always had an older look to themselves.
That
You
is
know,
true too.
there are some people that just have always looked older, like certain celebrities that are old now really did look old back then. They looked older
Yes.
than their age, right? I just think that it's just it's just that as well as, like you said, maybe they don't take care of themselves or out in the sun too much or smoking. It could be that, but let's at least give ourselves a pat on the shoulder for, not looking our age. All right, honey, tell everybody how they can find you.
They can find me on all social media as the Rhonda Marie, and my podcast is An Accidentally Beautiful Life.
And I am nothing but Julie. And feel free, you can go to my Instagram page and click on the link in the bio, and you can see how you can get in touch with me. Thanks, Rhonda. This was a lot of fun. Enjoy the rest of your
Thanks,
week.
Julie. Enjoy
Okay,
your week too. Bye.
thanks.